Hi guys. All right, we're going to go over this equations test so that you are ready for the retake. Here we go. Question 1 looked like this. What is the solution to 2 minus 4a equals 16? So first, we're doing the reverse order of operations. So we're going to get rid of this positive 2. So some of you, if you got this one wrong, you added 2 on both sides, but this is already a 2. So if I did 2 plus 2 right here, then that would give me a 4. When there's no sign in front of it, the sign in front of the number tells you whether it's positive or negative. When there's no sign there, it means it's a positive number. So the first thing you should have done on your workspace was subtract 2 on both sides. Another hard thing about this problem is the minus sign. There's a minus sign in front of the 4, and that makes that 4 a negative. So you have to bring it down because you're basically multiplying the a by a negative 4. And so the opposite of multiplying by a negative 4 is dividing by a negative 4. So this is a fraction, and when I divide this on my calculator, it doesn't come out to a whole number, which just means that first I would look at this and say, well, I can divide them both by 2 and make this negative 7 over 2. If you didn't realize that as quickly and you said, well, I'm going to turn this into a decimal anyway, then you could have just turned the fractions into decimals, right? So 14 divided by negative 4 is negative 3.5. And that is what this equals when I do 7 divided by 2 on my calculator. So you could have done, if you made it a decimal, you should have found the fraction that equaled a decimal, because this one I think would be negative 4.5. So that's not the right answer. All right, so 2 hard things. This positive 2 right here means you got to subtract 2 on both sides. This minus sign in front of the 4 means you got to divide both sides by a negative 4. And then it gave you a weird fraction as an answer, which is fine. All right, question 2. All right, so this one, get rid of the plus 10 first because we're doing reverse order of operations. So I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides of the equal sign. And that leaves me with x over 4 on this side and 24 on this side. Do you have to have all of this on your workspace paper to get credit? Yes. This is showing the work. This is what we need to see. I also need to see this part. The opposite of dividing by 4, guys, is multiplying by 4. I'm not multiplying 4 times 4 over here. This is on the bottom of a fraction. So technically, I'm multiplying 4 over 1 by 1/4, and that's how this equals 1. But the easy way to remember it is if you're dividing by 4, multiply by 4 to get rid of it. That's all you really have to remember. All right, and that equals 96. I feel like everyone did a little bit better on this one overall. All right, question 3. All right, so there's 2 ways to look at this. First one is, what's the opposite of subtracting a negative 4? The opposite of subtracting a negative 4 is adding a negative 4 on both sides. So I'm going to add a negative 4 on both sides. This is the first way to look at this. Some of you like to look at it this way. Oh, the opposite of subtracting a negative 4 is adding a negative 4. So this leaves me with 0 on this side, p plus 0, and 8 plus negative 4 on my calculator gives me 4. The other way is that when I see a minus and a negative right next to each other, I know right away that really means p plus 4. Like I have to make them both positive because of the rule with subtracting integers is keep, change, change. You're keeping this, you're changing this, and you're changing this. Minus a negative is really plus a positive. And then when you have p plus 4, that's really easy. The opposite of plus 4 is minus 4. So if you would rather turn this into plus positive and then do your problem, say what's the opposite of, or if you're looking at it this way, what's the opposite of subtracting a negative 4? It's adding a negative 4. So you should have added a negative 4 in this one or just subtracted 4. Both mean the same. Okay, so this one, those of you that are looking to do algebra next year, some of you actually set up an equation for this. I saw it in your workspace. So you knew that Venus plus the Fumiko are adding up to $14.55 an hour. But Venus earns $2.25 more per hour than Fumiko. So we wouldn't be able to just divide 14.55 by 2 because they don't have the same amount of pay. Like it's not the same amount that they make. Otherwise, if I said that they made the same amount per hour, I could do $14.55 divided by 2. And that would tell me how much they make if they made the same amount, right? You just divide it by 2. In this problem, they don't. So I need to get rid of that $2.25 first before I can figure out, what's this? $12.30. Before I can divide it by 2, I need to subtract the part that somebody made more, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get $12.30. And now I can divide it by 2 because I know that they had to split this part that's left over, right? So I'm going to divide this by 2, and that's going to give me $6.15. But $6.15 is how much Fumiko works. Venus earns $2.25 more than Fumiko. So I have to take that $6.15 and add it to the $2.25 to figure out $8.40 is what Venus makes. This would be Fumiko. This would be Venus. And if I added those two up, it would equal $14.55. Those of you that subtracted the 225, you stopped there and you put A. That might have been the most common missed answer, but it's B. So if those of you that actually did set up an equation, Venus makes $2.25 plus whatever he makes. And he makes that much. We don't know, right? So this equation, for those of you that can understand it, this equation is really 2Fs plus 225, which is why we subtract the 225 on both sides. And then I'm left with 2F equals that, and that's why we divide both sides by 2. But that tells me what Fumiko makes. I let you solve, this is a word problem. I let you guys solve it whatever way you could. I did not make you set up an equation, but those of you going to algebra, that's a good idea that you even started to try to do that, okay? All right, 12 minus 1/9 times D equals 17. All right, step 1, draw a line down the middle. And now I'm gonna look at this 12 because this is being added to this negative 1/9 times D. So those of you that understood the order of operations, I would multiply by negative 1/9 first, and then I would add 12 second. So if I'm gonna undo and reverse, I'm gonna get rid of this plus 12 by subtracting 12 first. Why is this a plus 12? Because there's nothing in front of it. So I already know that that's a positive 12. You can't add 12 to 12, you're gonna get 24, and we're not gonna get any closer to getting that variable by itself over here. So I'm left with negative 1/9 times D equals 5. All right, and then I have to do the opposite. So this is the hard part. I'm doing the opposite of multiplying by negative 1/9, which is dividing by negative 1/9. But in math, in elementary school, you should have learned that dividing by a fraction is really multiplying by the reciprocal. Flip the 1/9 over. Because I can't, if I do 1/9 divided by negative 1/9, that's kind of easy, that's 1. But if I did 5 divided by negative 1/9, I'm really going to flip it to times negative 9 over 1. So, because that's what happens when you divide. If I put divided by negative 1/9 here, I can't actually do that on paper. I'm going to end up doing this. 5 over 1 times, flip this over, negative 9 over 1. So if you got negative 45, you were correct on this problem. That's a hard one because it's got the fraction, right? And you should be dividing both sides by a fraction, which really means you're multiplying by the reciprocal. All right, this one was weird because it's different order of operations. This fraction bar kind of groups this x plus 5 on top. And so you have to get rid of the 30 first in this problem. We have to get rid of that 30 first. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 30 because that's the opposite of dividing both sides by 30. So multiply both sides by 30, And that leaves me with x plus 5 on this side and 360 on this side. And then the opposite of plus 5 is minus 5. And x equals 355. So I haven't made you guys do this a lot this year or at all, but you can check your answers every time you get one in an equation. You can put this 355 right here and do the math. If x was 355 plus 5 would be 360, and 360 divided by 30 is 12. You could check it every time. This work we need to see on paper. If you did not show me this work, you don't get the credit. So make sure you're practicing right now, writing these on the whiteboard, making sure you get these right. Okay, so 18 equals negative 5 times y minus 7. So I'm going to get rid of the minus 7 first by adding 7 on both sides. And that equals 25 on this side and negative 5 times y on this side. Don't forget the negative in front. That's the biggest thing. Keep an eye out for minus and negatives all year long, okay? The opposite of multiplying by negative 5 is dividing by negative 5. So I'm going to do the opposite on both sides to undo this to get 1y on the right side and a negative 5 on the right side. Whoa, sorry. So that is C. And I can plug it in up here and do the math, and it would be right on my calculator. All right, number 8. This is another word problem, which you could have done any way you wanted to. Really, you're just translating these words into math. So if Henry is H years old and Mr. Kitchen is 3 times Henry's age, but he's 4 less than. This is the part that we're really writing as translating 3 times or 4 years less than. Less than means I got to subtract. So if Henry was, I'm just going to make up a number. If Henry is 12, then what would Mr. Kitchen be? Well, I would have to multiply this by 3 first, and then I would have to subtract 4 because he's 4 years less than 3 times. So he would be 32. So that helps me figure out the order, which is times 3 and minus 4. A lot of you that got this wrong said plus 4, maybe because you were thinking like the opposite to solve an equation. But really, we would be writing the order of operations in this one, not solving it yet. All right. Number 9. So this one looks pretty straightforward, and I think you guys missed it just because you went too fast maybe, but it looked like on your workspace, most of you divided both sides by 30, and then you just like picked A or something. I don't know. I don't know if you just didn't like the way this looked, but 40 over 30 is a fraction that can be simplified, right? Divide them both by 10 and you get 4/3. If you don't like that it's a fraction and you divide it on your calculator, you're going to get 1.3 repeating. So this, if you put this into a decimal, make it a decimal in your calculator by doing 3 divided by 4, that equals 0.75. So that's not the same thing, but a lot of you picked A, maybe because you saw the 3 and the 4, I don't know. But this one was 4 over 3, which is 1 1/3. Last problem, the perimeter problem. So a triangle, the way to find the perimeter of a triangle is to add up the 3 sides. So, right, the perimeter around something is like you're trying to figure out how much fencing you need. So you need the feet there. So this one said it was 16 meters on one side, it was 8 meters on another side, and we didn't know what the other one was. Some of you people wanting to do algebra next year understood, oh, if I set this up like an equation, 16 plus 8 plus x, all of that has to equal 34. That's the equation. Some of you just did the math on your own, and that's fine too. 16 plus 8 is 24. And then you said, okay, well, I'm going to add these two numbers, and then I'm going to subtract them from the 34. So if you got 10 for that third side, you were good. 10 meters. All right, guys, hope that helped. There's going to be some review questions. I think I'm going to post a quizzes to clarify still. Make sure you're showing your work on paper. If this doesn't make sense, don't take your retake until it does, because it won't help you to not do well twice. So see me on a Monday with some questions. All right, guys.